Kia ora, good morning everyone, Richard here, welcome back to the channel. A while ago, I have reviewed the TechGuard ETZ11 adapter, which was the first Sony E-mount lenses adapter for Nikon Z cameras, and it provides full electronic and autofocus support. So while the TechGuard adapter does work reasonably well with most lenses, it does have a few weaknesses. For example, it doesn't work with the crop sensor Nikon Z camera because the physical dimension just doesn't fit. And it also can't work with the dumb E-mount lenses. So for example, if you have a fully mechanical lens from Laowa, TT Artisan, 7 Artisans or Metacom for example, then you cannot use those lenses with the TechGuard adapter on your Nikon Z camera because the camera will just refuse to fire the shutter. Megadap has recently launched a new Sony E-type lenses to Nikon Z mount camera adapter, which is the Megadap ETZ11. It is very similar to the TechGuard adapter, but it does claim to work with the Nikon crop sensor cameras and also support the fully mechanical lenses. And there are also a few other improvements as well. So I have tested out this adapter with multiple lenses and multiple cameras and going to share with you my results and thoughts in this video. And before we start, I want to say a big thank you to Auckland Camera Center for their help making this video. If you need any camera gear, definitely go check out their website or visit their showroom here in Auckland, New Zealand. Let's talk about the design of this adapter first. Because the French distance between the Z and E-mount are very similar, so this Megadap adapter is a very thin adapter. The outside ring of the adapter is only 2mm thick and the whole adapter is just around 1cm thick in total. So it is an incredibly small adapter which has all the electronic components embedded. The adapter is mostly made of metal. If you have watched my TechGuard ETZ11 review, one issue I mentioned was that because the TechGuard adapter is so small and so thin, I found it really tricky to release the lens from the TechGuard adapter and also very hard to remove the adapter from the camera body because there was just one very small tab that is extruded from the adapter, so it's really hard to remove the adapter from the lens or the camera, and I felt like I may break the tab every time when I try to remove it. But now with this Megadap adapter, it is much better. There is a large button here on the adapter which I can press and hold very easily, and this just make removing this adapter super easy. You can see the connector at the front for the E-mount lens, and if you look at the back, there is one thing I don't really like about the Megadap adapter, which is that the electronic circuit is quite exposed. I don't know if it does really affect anything, but it looks a bit messy. Megadap said they use some waterproof glue to protect some components, but then I don't really think this is a weatherproof adapter anyway. But apart from the exposed circuit at the back, the overall build quality appears to be very good and solid, and that large button here really gives me a lot more confidence when I try to mount or unmount this adapter. Just like most other electronic adapters in the market, the Megadap ETZ11 also allows you to update the firmware. And there are some good and bad things I want to talk about. So let's start with the good things first. Firstly, it comes with this USB cable that has a clip here for you to connect the Megadap adapter to your computer for you to update the firmware. And then Megadap appears to be pretty good at providing firmware updates. They are already close to 10 firmware updates by the time I'm working on this review, which has fixed different issues, and there are also some performance improvements as well. And the firmware update process is also pretty straightforward, and it supports both Windows and Mac. You just need to connect the adapter using this cable to your computer, and then the adapter will appear as a USB drive on your computer. Then just download the latest firmware from their website extract the zip file and then drag the extracted file onto the USB drive that represent the adapter. And one last thing, very important, is you just press the eject drive button. So you don't need to install any driver or any software. That's very easy. However, let's talk about the bad part, and it is the design of this clip. It is really not that good. I tried to update the firmware using both my Windows and Mac computer, and I just couldn't get it to detect and connect to the adapter, and I was about to give up after spending almost 15 minutes. And then I thought, okay, I just give it one more try and just one more wiggle of this clip, and it finally worked. And once I got it to connect, and it becomes much easier to connect again. So I think it's just me figured out how do you use this clip to successfully clip onto the connector. But yeah, still I think the design of this connector could be much better. It should be a very easy and straightforward process to connect the adapter to your computer. Fortunately, this is the only major complaint I have with this adapter. Everything else about this adapter is pretty positive in general. But anyway, if you got this adapter and failed to connect to your computer, it probably doesn't mean something is faulty. You just need to carefully adjust the clip so that it will connect to your computer. Unlike the firmware update, which could be a little bit tricky, using this adapter is super easy, very inconvenient. You just need to attach the adapter to your Nikon Z camera and then mount the E-mount lens onto the adapter. The only thing is, when you attach the adapter onto your camera, make sure you line up the dots on the adapter to the dot on the body when you mount it, as you could actually mount it the other way around, and when you do that, the adapter wouldn't click onto the body. And I did that myself once when I was testing it, and I was wondering why it doesn't lock onto the camera until I figured out I mounted the adapter in the opposite way. Once everything is attached, then just turn on your camera and the E-mount lens should operate pretty much just like a native lens. You can change the aperture setting from the dial on the camera body, and if the lens has an aperture range, you could also use that to change the aperture value instead of using the camera dial. The camera can obtain all the lens information such as the focal length, the aperture value that you are using right now, and you can see all this information in the EXIF data of the photo. And of course, the most important thing, autofocus would work. Face detection also works in both photo and video mode, just like a native lens. Megadap recommends you to use the wide area autofocus mode when you are shooting in APSC mode and avoid using the pinpoint autofocus mode. My test results matches their recommendation. The wide area AF mode appears to be the best under most situations, but I do find the single area AF could sometimes give me more reliable results for some lenses. I have tried the pinpoint AF with a few lenses, but yeah, it doesn't really work, so I would not be bothered with the pinpoint autofocus when you're using this Megadap adapter. And just like most of the other autofocus adapter that I have tried before, the autofocus performance appears to be the best when you use the center or close to center autofocus area. So I would suggest you to use the center autofocus area if you want the best autofocus performance. I would also suggest you not to update the firmware on your Nikon Z camera immediately after Nikon release it, as a new firmware may make the adapter fail to work. This is the same for a lot of third-party lenses, and Megadap, they do appear to update the firmware quite quickly to support the latest camera firmware changes. But still, it takes a bit of time for Megadap to bring out the new firmware, so it's best to wait a little bit until Megadap officially supports the latest firmware. And as Megadap said it would work with APS-C Nikon Z camera, so I tried it and I tested out with the Nikon ZFc. The Megadap adapter does attach and lock onto the body with no issue, and everything also appears to work as expected. As a third-party adapter, one thing you need to know is the autofocus performance would vary and really depends on the lens you use. So there's no guarantee that it will work perfectly with every E-mount lenses in the market. And in fact, if you look at the firmware update history, you may notice a lot of the changes are specially to improve the compatibility or performance with some particular lenses. So if you do have a particular lens that you want to use with this adapter, you better check on the internet and see if other people have used that same setup and see what is their result before you purchase this adapter. Obviously, with so many E-mount lenses in the market, I can't test every single one of them, but I've picked a total of 7 different lenses from different brands and different focal length and features, and I've tested them with the Megadap adapter. The first lens I tested is the Sony 24-70 f2.8 G Master. With this lens, the autofocus works okay at the wide end and autofocus speed is reasonably fast. Sometimes there will be some noticeable hunting back and forth when they try to lock onto the target. When that happens, if you let go of the shutter or the AF button and click again, it will quite often fixes it. At the telephoto end, autofocus is super fast and I don't really notice that hunting issue I just mentioned before. Continuous autofocus also works quite well, so overall this lens is usable with the Megadap adapter, just with some minor issues. Then I tested the Sony 20mm f1.8 lens. The autofocus performance with this lens is fantastic. It is very fast, pretty much as fast as a native Z lens and maybe even faster than some of the slower native Z lens. Accuracy and reliability both seem great. The aperture ring on the lens also works perfectly if you prefer to use the aperture ring instead to select your aperture value. Continuous autofocus also works great and it is super fast. So yeah, overall this lens performs almost like a native Z-mount lens. Then I tested the Samyang 35mm f1.8 lens. This lens appears to be only able to focus on close subjects. If I point the lens to something far away, then the lens wouldn't be able to focus at all. And then the next lens is the Sony 90mm f2.8 macro lens. With this lens, the autofocus performance seems to be really good too. It works very well in the single autofocus mode, even when focusing at macro distance, which is something sometimes even a native lens may not work very well. So yeah, macro autofocus works well with this lens. When I aim the camera to some far away object, the autofocus would sometimes seem confused and I need to tap the shutter button again, and that second press would usually make the autofocus work. Continuous autofocus works reasonably well overall, but sometimes it would be a bit confused. The next lens I test is the Sony 100-400 4.5 to 5.6 lens. At the wide end 100mm, the autofocus works very well. It's fast and very reliable. And when I change to the telephoto N 400mm, when I try to focus at some close objects, autofocus also works fine. However, when I try to autofocus on some far away object, then the camera is quite often confused and doesn't know how to autofocus. Continuous autofocus also works very well at the wide end, but not so good at the tele end for the same reason. I also tried turn on and turn off the optical image stabilizer, and it does appear to work. And then I tested the very popular Tamron 70-180 f2.8 lens. The lens autofocus is really fast at both the wide and telephoto end. Very reliable, and I didn't notice any issue. Continuous autofocus also works very well. The camera does occasionally would hunt a bit and a little bit confused, but overall the autofocus with this Tamron lens, even when shooting continuous autofocus mode, is very good and very usable. And the last lens I test is a fully mechanical lens that has no electronic contacts and also no autofocus, and it is the TT Artisan 40mm f2.8 macro lens, which I've also done a review on that lens recently. It is an APS-C lens, but I basically just want to confirm this fully mechanical lens can work well with the Megadap adapter, as it doesn't work with the Megadap ETZ11 adapter. And it works. Now, since it is a fully mechanical manual focus lens and doesn't have any electronic contacts, so you won't have any electronic features, but you can take photo with the Megadap adapter when you have this TT Artisan lens attached to it. And one interesting thing is, even though this TT Artisan lens is an APS-C lens, I noticed when I change the focus distance to macro distance, I get virtually no dark corner. So I could shoot some macro photo using this APS-C lens on a full frame camera. I tested video filming with face detection continuous autofocus with the Sony 20mm f1.8 lens. Autofocus works really quite well with this lens. Face, eye detection works, and the tracking is quite smooth without much pausing or hunting. And that was with the video autofocus settings on the Z6 II at the medium settings. And when I change the autofocus speed and sensitivity settings to maximum, and the result is quite a bit of hunting and the autofocus is just not very smooth or stable. So I would suggest keeping the autofocus setting to medium to get a smooth and still reasonably fast result. Consider what this Megadap ETZ11 adapter is trying to achieve. I think overall it has done a pretty good job. The actual autofocus performance is quite good. As you have seen, it works with a good number of lenses, and some of them works really well even in continuous autofocus mode, which is something always very tricky to get it right. But you have to understand that an adapter like this is created by reverse engineering and is doing something that wasn't expected by Nikon or Sony, so there will be some certain issues and limitations that you really have to accept. I also really like how it allows you to use a fully mechanical E-mount lens as well as use it on a APS-C Nikon Z camera. However, I do really wish they would improve the USB connector design, as the current one is not very easy to use at all. Fortunately, that's something you don't need to do every day. But anyway, if you have a Nikon camera and a few Sony lenses, I think it is a great affordable way to use your Sony lenses on your Nikon camera. But definitely check whether the E-mount lens that you want to use would work well or not with the Megadap adapter and the latest firmware, as some lenses may not work that well. So as usual, if you have any questions, thoughts, comments about this adapter, just drop a comment below, and please like and comment if you enjoyed this video to support me. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next video.